Vladimir Duthier.
And I'm Jill Wagner. Thank you for joining us.
All right, we now know the answer to Donald Trump's promise of a big, huge announcement. Sarah Palin, the Tea Party favorite, former governor of Alaska, will endorse Mr. Trump.
Trump says he is honored to receive Palin's endorsement. He calls her a friend and a high-quality person. Now, this announcement will happen at a rally in Ames, Iowa, where the two will appear together. That rally is scheduled to begin at 6 p.m. Eastern, and we'll have that for you live.
For more on the endorsement, we turn to CBS News senior political editor Steve Chaggaris, who is in Washington. Steve, we were talking about this earlier this afternoon. It is now a reality.
Yeah, not a huge surprise. I mean, we're sort of anticipating this, and you know, the more you look at the sort of background between Palin and Trump, you know, they've been flirting with each other basically for the last 6 months or so. He had suggested back in September that he would consider consider her for a cabinet position, energy secretary or something, and she brought him on one of her internet shows and did a very flattering interview with him. So, you know, not a real shocker here.
So how big a deal is this? Is this something that will translate, do you think, into a lot of votes in somewhere like Iowa?
Especially as it relates to Cruz.
I'd like to sort of raise the Cruz issue. I think this is a real blow for Ted Cruz. I mean, you look at it on paper. She, first of all, endorsed Ted Cruz in 2012 when he was running for the Senate. She also, by the way, endorsed Carly Fiorina when she ran in 2010. But I think, you know, you look on paper and you think she's probably most aligned with somebody like Ted Cruz, you know, outsider, Tea Party, very conservative. And so for Cruz not to get this endorsement, it's got to be a huge disappointment and really sort of plays negatively into what he's been dealing with the last couple weeks, which is he's not really been dictating how, his campaign at all. He's had to answer questions about his citizenship. He's had to answer questions about loans that he took out during his Senate candidacy. And now he's going to have to talk about how he didn't get Sarah Palin's endorsement. So at a time when he's trying to build momentum going into Iowa, he has just another distraction here. So I think it's a pretty big blow to Cruz. Now for Trump, I think what it does is, first of all, he's basically stolen a player from the other team. And, you know, I think a lot of people would have thought she would have gone to Cruz, and so now she's going to Trump. So that's good. Secondly, I think she gives him some cover with those voters who might have questioned Donald Trump's New
York values.
His republicanism, right? So you have Ted Cruz walking around saying New York values. This guy's not a true Republican. You know, you look back at his past and he said other things and he's really a liberal. Well, now you have somebody who is really considered one of the ultimate outsiders, anti-establishment people, Tea Party people, very conservative people in the party, and she says no to Ted Cruz and yes to Donald Trump. So I think that gives him a bit of credibility with that slice of the Republican Party.
And we did see just on the screen, Cruz tweeted basically praise for Sarah Palin.
Yeah, he didn't. He just says he will always, you know, be a big fan of hers. There it is. I love Sarah Palin USA.
And what happened there is earlier today, Cruz's spokesperson started dumping on Palin when the rumors started getting out that she might endorse Trump. And then there was a sort of backlash from Palin and from her daughter basically saying, no wonder why she's not going to endorse Cruz. I don't want her to endorse Cruz if his people are going to talk like that. So now I think you have Cruz out there sort of making amends for what his spokesperson said earlier.
So, Steve, when you were saying earlier that this is a bigger blow to Senator Cruz than it is perhaps a bigger boon to Donald Trump, is that because Donald Trump already has the majority of those Sarah Palin backers?
Well, maybe, but I really do think that Cruz really, you know, it's really incumbent. Trump has been the front runner here since he jumped in the race in June. And so Cruz did take a lead in Iowa last month. It slipped a little bit going into January, and he really needs the momentum to continue through Iowa and needs to win Iowa. Cruz does. I think Trump has a bit of a firewall. I think Trump is expected to do well in New Hampshire and may do well after that. But if Cruz doesn't win Iowa, I think that spells trouble for him moving forward. And so to take away something like this from Ted Cruz, especially at a time, as I said earlier, that he is really not dictating his message. The last couple of weeks, he's really been on defense. I know people said he did a great job in that debate last week, but what was going on in that debate was that he was answering questions about things that he doesn't really want to talk about. again, his citizenship, loans that he's taking out, and now it's going to be about Sarah Palin. He's not dictating his own campaign at this point, and I don't think that that's a really great recipe for bringing momentum to the caucuses in less than 2 weeks. And so, we'll see what happens. But it's just never a good thing when, I was talking to somebody earlier. I compared it. It's like if the New York Jets signed Tom Brady. Now, I don't know. Tom Brady's pretty old, right? He'd be going into a new system. How would he do for the Jets? I don't know. But I can tell you, he'd hurt the New England Patriots. That's sort of what's going on here. I think Palin being stolen away from Cruz hurts Cruz.
Steve, the question that I have is, given the media spotlight that has been on Donald Trump ever since he entered the race, now you've got another person who was on a presidential ticket, but also a reality TV star. I know you in the political unit, you guys are making calls to the campaigns and to try to figure out exactly how Sarah Palin will play into this, but do we expect to see her on the stump for Donald Trump? That could mean, how are we going to ever marshal the resources to cover these two luminaries?
And perhaps, Steve, sorry to interrupt, could it possibly hurt him in any way as he tries to become a real credible candidate?
Well, to answer Vlad's question first, I think from a logistical standpoint, I hope they campaign together so we don't have to do separate events, because it's just going to blow all our resources before we even get to the general election. But, I would assume that he would probably use her, and I don't know this, but, he's going to be going into a national campaign after they get past South Carolina on February 20th. The Republicans who are left are going into a national campaign. You've got a dozen or so states voting on March 1st, Super Tuesday, and then you've got several states on each voting day after that. And so it becomes more of a nationalized campaign. So to have somebody at the level of Sarah Palin, who is well known nationally, who will potentially be going to states that don't really pay attention to politics as deeply as people in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina do, I think that can only help him on the stump, because they're going to be paying attention to somebody who's going to be ostensibly echoing his sentiments on the stump for him. So I think that will help him moving forward. Maybe not immediately in Iowa and New Hampshire, but I think it will help him in the further states. To get to your question, the second question, I think, will this hurt him? I think at some point, he'll probably have to dial back on all of this right-wing Tea Party. That sentiment might not play as well in the general election. If he becomes the nominee of the Republican Party, I'm not sure you're going to see a lot of Sarah Palin campaigning for him in August, September, October of 2016. I'm just not sure how she plays to a general election audience. She definitely plays well to the base, and I think could be a big boon for him among Republicans. But in a general election, she might go into hiding after he gets the nomination.
Yeah, and Steve, before we let you go, I think we were just showing video of Donald Trump and Sarah Palin at a pizzeria in New York City. So when Senator Cruz talked about New York values, Donald Trump was criticized for eating pizza in New York City with a knife and a fork. So
just like the mayor of New York.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So,
I guess it's a thing that you're not supposed to do, but it seems like everybody does it anyway.
Steve Chaggaris in Washington. Steve, thanks so much.
Thanks.